Okay, so this is actually a little bit of a add-on to what we normally talk about. So I just released a new ops version of one of the neoan3 apps, and basically there was a lot of voices basically claiming that the Twig is a better templating engine. So to clarify that, so ops is not a templating engine per se. It's something that neoan3 uses in order to compile templates. And does that mean that effectively you can use it as a templating engine? Absolutely. And I understand how those similarities are quite convincing. But the idea of ops is to be way stricter when it comes to what kind of operations are done in a template engine. So classically speaking, little bit of a history here. If we look at something like Smarty, which was very dominant as a template engine for the longest time, we figured that people assumed that templates are written by designers and that are not necessarily coders. So that there's a particular form of developer that would generate templates and use a backend templating engine in order to facilitate the output. And this is more or less true to this day, but naturally the way we work nowadays, this approach doesn't really make sense. So if we're talking about like particular blocks and so on, then normally what we're talking about is how particular components work on the front end. And that's a longer discussion now of what kind of functionality is generated dynamically on the front end versus the back end and so on. And probably the biggest difference we want to look at here is search engine optimization. So what do we want the server to render versus what do we want the client to react on? That said, there is a need of dynamic templating, and that is the reason why something like template engines, maybe Twig, maybe a Blade, whatever, still have a legitimacy. I mean, I personally prefer something that actually makes things easier to write. So if you want to go down that road, look into something like PHP Pug or Fug. I don't really know what it's called nowadays, but that would actually simplify template creation and maintenance, and is very nicely handled. But here we are going to go to Twig. Twig is a Symphony template engine. It's pretty popular, and it's also a very good template engine. So let me start with that. It's very intuitive. It's easy to learn, and we can basically look into it right here. So what you see here is just a test HTML I created. Let me actually go ahead and delete this for now, so I don't want Twig to cache anything. So what you can basically see here is, okay, those are the regular substitutions for variables, and here would be now a loop written in Twig. So you can see that basically it has a start and end, so pretty classical. And then basically I put my variable substitutions in here accordingly. So we are, just a quick thing, we're going to iterate over 2 navigation points here. Both will lead to test HTML, but we don't really care about the links, and we'll render a title. So we should have 2 list items here, one called test1, one called test2. And what Twig does, and that's actually pretty smart from the approach, is it will take those templates and basically compile it into something that looks more along the lines like a native version of it. So basically, you know what? We're going to look at the output of the cache, and I think that's self-explanatory. And that makes it relatively fast. And naturally, Twig has to, do a lot of things. So you can set variables, you can do all the kinds of things that ops intentionally doesn't do. Because when it comes to code style, I mean, you simply shouldn't. I mean, whenever you do anything else, and this is my opinion, I mean, I'm, you know, happy to debate about it. If you do anything else but have a condition or iterate over something that comes from outside, so from the controller, then you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. You shouldn't have any kind of business logic in the view, and that's basically the reason why ops works differently. So then here we have the ops version of exactly the same. So you can see it is inline, a little bit more aligned to what you would see in, like this could now be if you also write front end, this looks very familiar to you. So this could potentially be an ng4 or a v4. So it's just inline and repeats the actual element itself. So here the same applies, right? So I mean, we name it nav here. I mean, one of the things you notice maybe is that, so here the syntax is, okay, for item in navigation. So this is pretty JS style. It's actually not really bad. I decided not to do that though. I'm not going to reformulate anything. So this is basically always exactly how we would write it in PHP, right? So for $navigation as $nav, we just omit the dollar signs. Other than that, it's pretty much PHP, and makes it also makes it also faster. We'll see that in a second. So how does this look like? So here I basically, like, I mean, it's probably not a big surprise. I you know, like require Twig and ops, and you know, those are dependencies. So we're basically just going to define a path for convenience. You don't have to do that, but it makes sense for me in this instance. And then load the composer autoload, and we should be fine. Those are our values. So those are the substitutions. So if everything goes to plan, name is what's going to be rendered here, and the navigation, again, those will be the links. So this will populate from a Twig perspective, and this will populate from a ops perspective. And here I'm not going to do anything with the engine yet. That's maybe for later. So here we have the ops block, right? So what are we going to do is, again, this we can ignore for now, and then this is just, you know, for convenience, so I can see what's going on. And then I set a micro time, and I get that as float. So that'll be relatively accurate. That's not really a benchmark, but, you know, just to give you an idea. And then I use the ops embrace from file, and I use the templates test HTML, so exactly what we're seeing here, in order to facilitate that. And here are my values, so I'm passing in the substitutions I want to do. And at the end of the day, I am going to echo the difference between the start and the end time. So how long did it take from here till here? That's about it. With Twig, it's basically the same. Again, let's ignore this. Here I'm echoing the, you know, that we're now in the context of Twig. And we basically do the same, right? So we reassign the micro time now to start, get the loader in. So here I basically just define the path to templates. That's you know, where I have those templates, and then that's basically all I need to do. And I want to run it with cache, so we can see how that looks like, and how that'll speed up the process. And then I render this, and again substitute it with the values. And here I echo, okay, how much time passed from the start of this operation to the end of this operation. Okay, so let's see. Oh, I should probably, hold on, should probably run this. Let's just do the onboarded, so there's nothing extra here. Localhost, what do I have open? 8080. Okay. So let's load it. Okay, so the first thing you see, like, this is to be expected, of course. So the first time it's rendered by ops. Ops doesn't understand what this is, so we cannot work with it. And then we have the, let's go over here to understand. And then this happens, so we have twice two navigations as predicted with test 1 and test 2. Then we have the Twig block, which renders the same, and there it's the other way around, so it can basically iterate over here twice. That's test 1 and 2. And here we don't see anything because it doesn't understand what's going on here. It cannot fill nav title here because it doesn't know what that is. So we get this empty list item here. So that is both to be expected. So in this first instance, what we also notice immediately is, okay, so the runtime is 0.02 seconds for ops and 0.5 seconds, which is pretty long for Twig. So what does this mean? This means that we have to look into, like, well, how does this change, right? So if I run it again, so now the cached version should hook into it, and we can see now it's only 0.04, right? So that's pretty fast, pretty impressive. But we can see that ops is still way faster than that. So how does the cache look like? Let's look at that. Right, I mean, ops wouldn't cache itself. I mean, it relies on the use of the neoan3 apps cache. If you want to combine that, I mean, right now we're not doing that. We're actually live rendering from scratch. So where's the interesting part? I mean, here you can basically see it, right? So here would be, the classical output, and as you can see, it basically writes it like if you were to write a view almost in a native way, right? So if you wouldn't use a template engine, like, oh, interesting, I have the, yeah, apparently I didn't, I mean, I am running 7.3, yeah, it's just that my IDE doesn't know that yet. And again, so this makes perfect sense. I mean, intonation and so on, okay, got it, but I mean, this is basically how you would run it, right? If you were not to use anything. So I like this approach. I think it's very smart, and considering what it needs to do in order to be a whole template engine, it is a very cool approach. But again, it's, of course, since it does encompass so much functionality, which I don't think you should use. The question is, well, does it make sense, to generate that kind of overhead? So I mean, regardless of how long I load this, right? So I will always be faster here. So even if I say I'm going to change this around, so let's just say I take the Twig block here, and hold on, the whole shebang, and say this actually runs before the ops block, right? Right, so now we switched it around, you will see it's still simply not as fast, just because it evaluates so many things. So that's of course a very easy example, right? Again, this doesn't I mean, that's not a benchmark that you can actually work with. I mean, you shouldn't make decisions based on that, but it's just to give you an idea of what what you lose in potentially in performance if you use a full-blown template engine. While again, you from a code style perspective, in my opinion, you shouldn't. I mean, you should have very concise form of dealing with views, and be relatively strict when it comes to model view controller pattern, as that makes the most sense when you work in an abstract way. That's it. Just wanted to show you that quickly, again, because I had some kind of doubts on Reddit concerning performance, because of course Twig is a mature, stable system and so on. And again, it's not that I disagree. It is. It's just depends on what it's intended for. So yeah, that's that. Just a little shout out. So if you're interested in what ops is, or if you kind of lost like what is a template engine in general and so on, try it out. There is a general templating attempt in the comments below of that'll take you through additional resources. Thank you so much, and see you guys around.